The NBA draft is just a little more than 3 weeks away, and of course the draft is one of the biggest events of the offseason, not only to see which prospects will be selected by which teams, but it's one of the busiest nights in terms of trades and other transactions that will occur amongst teams. And of course, leading up to the draft, especially after the finals conclude, we're going to be hearing all kinds of speculation and rumors about what teams are going to do come the draft and free agency later this month. And for the Bulls, while they've been relatively quiet over the last 2 years on the trade front, having only made one trade since 2021 in which they traded for the rights to draft Julian Phillips in the second round in last year's draft, and while I'm sure we're all skeptical of the Bulls actually making any bold moves, not just on draft night, but over the course of the whole offseason in general, we have been hearing some recent rumblings of the Bulls being a team that is interested in potentially trading up in the draft to select Donovan Clingan, the big man out of UConn, the two-time NCAA champion. And even though I wouldn't mind having Donovan Clingan on the Bulls roster mainly for his size and other reasons which I'll get to in this video, I think it would be a mistake to trade up in the draft to land this guy, and I'll explain why in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, of course, with the finals set to begin this week and the season-long partnership with myself and Underdog Fantasy ending at the end of the NBA season, it's going to be one of your last chances to sign up with the promo code to take advantage of Underdog's offer exclusively for this channel, where they're giving away up to $250 in bonus cash, as well as a special pick in the lobby to increase your odds on your NBA pick'ems. They're going to have pick'ems for every finals game on most player stats. If you think Luka is going to ball out like we saw him do in Game 5 against the Wolves and put up over 30 points, or maybe you think Jason Tatum is going to put up over 25 points, pick higher on both of those guys and their point totals, and you can win up to 100 times your money on the night. So check it out. I'll leave a link to the site and the code in the description if you are interested. Now, this recent report of the Bulls being interested in trading up into the draft for Clingan was reported coming out of Draft Express, and they aren't the only team actually being rumored to be interested in moving up into the draft to get him. Teams like the Grizzlies and the Blazers have evidently also been looking to make such moves to snag the 7'2" big man. And look, well, I would like to see the Bulls actually make some moves for once and be aggressive in their pursuit of adding talent to this roster. I just don't think this is the right play. I know I talked about Clingan in my draft prospects video, but really touched on him as an unlikely option because he's not going to be on the board at number 11. And even though I think Clingan is a type of player that you could draft and would actually start contributing right away, which is what the Bulls are looking for given they're still looking to remain competitive, I just don't think this is the type of draft where you try to trade up, presumably by trading away future assets to get a higher lottery pick. This isn't the draft to do that. It would be different if you had some potential star level prospects, generational type players at the top of the draft, but this isn't it. And I would be wary to give up more than you really need to get a player most likely on the same talent level as someone you could otherwise get with the 11th pick. Like, that's been the biggest thing talked about with this draft class, and we've talked about it here on the channel as well, as this draft is all over the place in terms of assessing the level of talent, the potential, and ceilings of the various prospects who have declared. Mock drafts are all over the place, where you have about 4 or 5 different guys projected to go number 1 on different boards. You have some guys who are going in the top 5 in some mock drafts, but in others you see them falling into the late lottery. Donovan Clingan, for example, some media outlets had him going number 1 after UConn won the title, but in more recent mock drafts post the combine, you have some boards having him go number 2, some even as late as 7 or 8. But I've yet to see a mock draft, unless I've just missed it, that has him falling outside of the top 10. The lowest one I saw for him had him projected to go 8th overall. So while I could say, hey, if the guy falls to 11 somehow, great, you absolutely take him and that would be a steal for the Bulls. But realistically speaking, it's just not going to happen. So yes, if the Bulls do in fact have their eyes set on Donovan Clingan, they're going to have to make a move to trade up to get it. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a ton of things to like about Clingan, especially for what the Bulls need. You're talking about a massive dude who will be one of the tallest players in the NBA when he comes in, listed at 7'2" with a 7'6" wingspan, 280 pounds. He's one of the best shot blockers in college basketball last season, averaging 2.5 blocks per game and 11.4 block percentage. He's a great rim protector with his ability to read the floor in the pick and roll, good footwork in the paint to stay in front of his man. He's obviously a solid rebounder given his size, good at getting second chance points off offensive rebounds, great interior scorer and a lob threat. Like, these are all the things the Bulls could absolutely use. And if they lose Drummond in free agency, obviously, which I've said before is likely, you're going to need a big to come off the bench, and he foots the bill. I think for me, the biggest downsides in trading up to get this guy is, one, I don't like risking future assets for a player that I don't see having a ton of upside. I mean, to me, I kind of view Clingan as a solid role player in the NBA at best, and a player who would probably fall in the 10 to 15 range in most other draft classes. He's a horrible free throw shooter, like almost as bad as Andre Drummond. He can shoot it from deep. He's not like Drummond in that regard where he just doesn't shoot them, period. And he has improved his outside shooting overall, but I wouldn't consider him to be a reliable outside shooting big who's going to help you space the floor. And then, I mean, I watched this guy play, which granted, I only saw him a bit in the tournament and just highlight footage, but he's kind of slow-footed in defending the perimeter and sticking with his man and getting the basket. Not that athletic overall. Moves a little clunky in the post. Like, he gets the job done, especially when it comes to his interior defense, but I do wonder how well that will translate into the NBA. But because of some of these weaknesses and deficiencies, I have a hard time seeing him being anything more than a role player. And that's not someone you make a move to trade up for in the draft, because you either traded future assets to get a role player, or worse, you traded up into the top 5 all but to get a bust. For me, I would much rather see the Bulls, if they're going to be more aggressive, to be more aggressive in other areas, like trading for players who are already either a little more established or have a higher ceiling and potential than someone like Clingan. Now, I say all this as if the Bulls should in no way, shape, or form look to trade up to get him, but of course, like in any trade, it all just depends on what they would have to give up to get him. I mean, if it's for something like Javon Carter and a future second or two, and the Bulls would still be able to keep their 11th pick, yeah, sign me up. But we know it's not going to be that. It's going to be something along the lines of them trading their pick at 11 with some team in the top 5 and a future second round pick, maybe even that lottery protected pick from Portland. And for me, that's just not worth it. You already have the 11th pick in the draft that is being viewed as a crapshoot where the talent is fairly even across the top 15. And it's not like there won't be players that would fit a position of need for the Bulls at 11. There are a lot of centers and power forwards and big wings in this draft. It's not like they have to go out and get Clingan and Clingan only. Like, I saw one mock trade where the Bulls would send the 11th pick and Alex Caruso to the Rockets to get the number 3 overall pick. Like, no, you trade arguably your most valuable asset, given the interest level in Alex Caruso throughout the league, to get up to the 3rd pick in a weak draft class. Now, you could say, well, maybe the Bulls, they do revisit talks with the Pistons on a potential Zach Lavine trade, and maybe the Bulls get the 5th pick out of it, especially since the Pistons would have the cap space to absorb all of Zach's salary, so it would be a situation where they would have to take around the same amount of Zach and what he's making in return. So a trade like that would actually prove to be beneficial to the Bulls if the market for Zach is still pretty barren, and this would be an instance where you can get off of his contract without having to take much salary back in return, which helps the Bulls in remaining under the tax, and you get the number 5 pick out of it. That would be something that's intriguing for sure. But even then, it's not a guarantee that Clingan would be available at number 5. So sure, there could be some rare circumstances where trading up in the draft makes sense for the Bulls if they don't have to give up too much to do so, or they're able to trade a player they were already looking to move on from anyway, like Zach Lavine. Outside of that though, this isn't the draft to make a big move to get up into the top 5. I would love to hear what you guys think though. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.